Hello, I'm Ricky Church for Flickering Myth, and I'm here today with author Adam Christopher, who has written Star Wars Master of Evil, a book about Darth Vader's earliest days. So, how are you doing, Adam?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me on.
All right. So, Master of Evil. Like I said, this book takes place very shortly after Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin is just transitioning into the full Darth Vader that we know and love. So what's that like, exploring Darth Vader's like earliest days? Was there any trepidation you felt writing such a iconic character?
Well, it's a really interesting period for Vader because, like you said, he's literally just got into the suit after Revenge of the Sith, and Master of Evil is set probably days or short weeks after that happens.
Mhm.
So he's definitely Vader's a different character to the one that we know, for example, in the original trilogy. Um, One of the key things that we forget, I think, is that Vader is a mystery to everybody. Um, the Republic has formed, the Empire has kind of come into being, Palpatine's the Emperor, and then suddenly Darth Vader is there, and nobody knows who he is, nobody knows where he came from. He's clearly got close access to the Emperor.
Mhm.
These are all things that, like, because we as the Star Wars fans and as viewers are so familiar with Vader and what he looks like, sounds like, everything about him, we forget that initial sort of impact. Not just the impact, well, actually, two things: the impact that he had on viewers of, A New Hope
Mhm.
in 1977. That wasn't called New Hope, but you know what I mean. We forget that, like, Vader looks like nothing else and sounds like nothing else, and as his mask is a skull. We forget that kind of thing. So to be able to kind of explore the mystery of Vader at that point, right at his kind of first appearance, um, is really cool. And it's really interesting because Vader is new and with a lot of Star Wars storytelling, because we tell stories that are set at different time points in the whole saga. We know where Vader is going and what happens next, and what happens 20 years later. But the opportunity was there to steer Vader in that direction. It's like, yeah, we know that he's obsessed with getting Padme back, and yes, we've seen that in the comics and
Mhm.
things like the Vader Immortal video game. It's part of his character, but where did all that come from?
Mhm.
So this is almost a sort of unique opportunity to put that foundation in, and see where it goes. Yeah.
Mhm. I like what you said about like how Vader just seemingly appears out of nowhere in the Star Wars universe at this point in time. Like nobody knows who he is, what he is. And I really like the perspective that you did in this book, where like Vader is you only kind of get his perspective in a few select chapters. The rest is all from other people. Um, so I wonder, like, how did you come to that conclusion of, I'm gonna make this book from so that we see Vader from like an outsider looking in,
Mm.
give Halland kind of the main point of view so we can really see what Vader's like.
Yeah, I think right from the very beginning that I knew that was how the book had to be done, because we're talking about Vader as both a mystery and a kind of terror, which is like super important. So the closer you get to Vader, you start diminishing the mystery and diminishing Darth Vader as a nightmare monster, which he
Mhm.
is. Which again, sometimes we forget that he is because
Mhm.
he's so ubiquitous. Um, so it had to be an outsider who had access to Vader. So Royal Guard came to mind as, like, well, this is perfect kind of character because they can get so close to Vader. And because Vader is a mystery, it's all about how he is seen by others and how his presence affects what goes on around him. So we see, and this is kind of really was a lot of fun to do because trying to describe Vader, like from the point of view of someone who's never seen
Mhm.
Vader before, like the
Yeah.
suit and the lights, the chest unit, the breathing, and the character you mentioned, Helen Goth, who's this royal guard, he's someone who thinks he knows what's going on. He served the Republic, he now serves the Empire. The Empire is going to bring stability and prosperity and peace and all that kind of thing. He helped clear out the Jedi Temple after Order 66,
Mhm.
and he was there at the ceremony where they burned the lightsabers, which we see in Charles Soule's Vader comic. Um, so, not a spoiler to say that this at some point he goes with Vader and Vader uses the Force and ignites his lightsaber. For us, that's nothing new, but for Goth, he's suddenly thinking, what is going on? What is
Mhm.
happening? I thought I knew what the order of the galaxy was. The Jedi are dead. We burned the lightsabers, and yet the Emperor was triumphant, and yet his right hand man is
Yeah.
using the Force and has
Yeah,
got a
with a
lightsaber.
lightsaber color no one's ever
Yeah.
seen before. So.
And it's like, Goth's like, what's a red lightsaber? Well, what does that mean? So
Mhm.
again, and that then sets Goth off on this kind of journey of discovery about Vader. So yeah, so we learn more about Vader from that kind of outsider's point of view because this is the kind of thing I say. It's like, favorite scene for a lot of people in Rogue One, which is an amazing movie,
Yeah.
is the Vader scene at the end in the corridor,
Mhm.
and that is such an impactful scene. Comes, I think, trying to remember, like it came out of nowhere because like we thought we hoped to see stuff, but then suddenly it's like this is amazing. This is that same impact
Mhm.
of Vader walking to the ship that people must have had back in 1977, which is
Mhm.
amazing. But that comes on the end of 2 hours of Rogue One, which is this really amazing and kind of complex story. You can't have a 2 hour movie of Vader in the corridor. Like,
Mhm.
it just doesn't make any sense. And the thing with the novel is that just because of the medium, you can really get into far deeper dive into character and motivation and themes and all that kind of important stuff.
Mhm.
Vader exists in a lot of comics, especially the 2017 Darth Vader series by Charles Soule. My novel closely follows because it ties into it and then kind of goes off on its own direction. There's a gap in the storyline where I could place a book. Um, but yeah, it's like it had to be a different kind of thing and it had to be a different point of view. But you're right, like we do get Vader's point of view, um, because Vader's journey is just as important as Goth. Vader he's a different character at the end of the book to what he is at the beginning because he learns stuff. He starts off wanting to know the secrets that Palpatine promised, and then he makes discoveries of his own,
Mhm.
which is a really important part of his character. And what I was saying before, it's like this is then the start of that journey that puts him onto a certain path. And yeah, we've seen him go after Padme before, but this is the foundation, which was really important. And again, he's almost like a less is more kind of thing. It's
Mhm.
a Master of Evil is a Darth Vader book, and it's also a book about Darth Vader.
Yeah.
He is the main character. Goth is also the main character. Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and obviously this is not your first Star Wars book because a few years ago you made your debut Star Wars with Shadow of Sith that followed Luke Skywalker. So, how does it feel for you to now have written like two of the main books about two of the main Star Wars heroes, like Anakin still has embers. Sorry, Darth Vader still has embers of Anakin in this book that you see here and there, and then Shadow of the Sith is like all about Luke discovering all these Sith secrets. So, what's it like to have now written about Vader and Luke?
Well, it's actually kind of amazing, and it's I one of those things I didn't realize until afterwards because yeah, my first Star Wars novel was a Luke Skywalker book. My second Star Wars novel is a Darth Vader book. They are the biggest characters in Star Wars. Like it's like they are what Star Wars is about.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really amazing. With both books, and this is kind of weird because they are such central characters, like the most important characters, the most complex characters, and yet for both books, I had really such a freedom to write the story that had to be written. Um, Often when you do, I've done Doctor Who and I've done Stranger Things, World of Warcraft, all kinds of different universes. And sometimes the stories you have to tell are very specific. It's like it's got to fit into this era, this between whatever, between movies or TV episodes, or it's got to be this character who's going to do this thing. Which is what, Shadow of the Sith and Darth Vader, I like that because these characters were going to do certain things. And I was going to, especially with Shadow, I was going to tell that very particular story of Luke and Lando going after Ochi and Bestoon. Um, but again, with this freedom, it's like, yeah, write the story that you want to write. Using two of, to talk about both Shadow and Master of Evil, like the most iconic characters in movie history,
Yeah.
especially Darth Vader. Not to say anything bad about Luke, but like Darth Vader is iconic. Not just iconic in Star Wars, but like in public
Yeah.
consciousness.
Yeah. He's instantly recognizable, even if you
Yeah,
haven't seen Star Wars.
this is the thing, and this is the kind of the puzzle I had to solve was like, how then do I manage to strip all that away and get down to the mystery of Darth Vader when everybody thinks they know everything? What
Mhm.
what story can you tell about Darth Vader? We've seen his whole life from childhood to to Darth Vader to
Yeah.
death, the whole thing. But I think he's the most complex character in Star Wars,
Mhm.
for a lot of
Yeah,
reasons.
for sure.
And although, yes, there's loads of comics, books, there's the Obi-Wan TV series, there's the movies, um, those are still only really snapshots. I mean,
Hmm.
we think the prequel trilogy is, childhood, adolescence, young adulthood to Vader. It's not his whole life. And again, Revenge of the Sith, the comics, Master of Evil, and we've got the Obi-Wan TV series. And then, those are only snapshots.
Hmm.
A person's life is deep and complex. And we could tell Darth Vader stories forever and still find new things about him because he's really much more complicated. Like if he's more mysterious and scarier than we remember, he's also more complex than we remember.
Hmm.
And I think Master of Evil, because you could really dig in, I could really dig into that character. Was an opportunity to revisit all those kind of aspects of Vader that I love and that Vader fans love, um, in a kind of new way.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that this book takes place very shortly after Revenge of the Sith. So the Empire is like it's just transformed into the Empire. It's still in its infancy. And we've seen little bits of the beginnings of the Empire in like shows like The Bad Batch or the one of the books released earlier this year, Mask of Fear.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the Empire in its beginnings, compared to something like the original trilogy or Andor, where we see it in like its full effect and power, what kind of stuff were you looking at to display the Empire in its earliest days?
The Empire is really interesting because we can kind of have the impression that the change from Republic to Empire is very fast. That it's like it just changes, and it's the Empire, and there's the Emperor. But really, it must have been long and complicated. And there was more, like as Goth discovered, there was more going on than he really realized, and that we realized. And part of the storyline of Master of Evil is Vader, who is at the heart of the Empire and at the Emperor's side, is being watched by the Imperial Security Bureau, which itself was a new organization with supervisors and other people within it trying to work out what they're doing and how do we guide the Empire especially through these early days. And in fact, a lot of characters kind of mention that it's like, yeah, like the Empire is like it's strong and it's going to be good, but it needs guidance
Mhm.
because at the moment, yeah, it's not fragile, but like things can happen, things can change. So there's a lot of people working to kind of guide it, which we see in things like, I mean, Andor is obviously set much later, but we get glimpses of it in Andor. And yeah, the Bad Batch, as you mentioned, is also set around this time period. And also like in the Vader comic. Yeah, the Vader comic is,
Mhm.
but the Vader comic, the in Master of Evil, nobody knows who Vader is. He hasn't even been introduced to like the senior Imperial officers, the whole hierarchy thing. That then takes place in the Vader comic after
Yeah.
Master of Evil. Because yeah, things happen in stages and phases and things changed. And the Empire is very different now to A New Hope.
Mhm.
Yeah, we our first glimpse of the Empire is in the middle of a civil war with the rebellion.
Yeah.
Totally different landscape to the galaxy to these days. It's just kind of really it's fascinating that this exists, this kind of modern mythology of Star Wars,
Mhm.
both for ourselves as kind of fans, but like within the Star Wars universe, the people living it fictionally,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like how you put that modern mythology because Star Wars is like just everywhere. Like most people know it and have seen the movies, or at least seen some kind of Star Wars material. And coming up on 50 years now, like why do you think the franchise just keeps staying relevant, staying beloved by the fans? Like what is it to you that makes you keep coming back to it? Not just as an author, but as a fan.
yeah. I think it's one of those things where, with A New Hope, George Lucas, that movie had all kinds of production problems, and everybody knows all this kind of stuff. But he channeled something beyond just the script that he wrote and the film he directed. It's one of those things you can never predict success, or you can never predict fame or whatever. And it just, I say sometimes with writing, like there's some themes, and if you ask an author about a theme of the book, what is the book about? They often don't know until kind of afterwards. It's like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, I actually wrote a book about whatever. And maybe George didn't understand what he'd done until afterwards because it channeled something. It's like A New Hope is it's a science fiction movie, it's a fantasy movie, it's a western, it's a samurai movie,
Mhm.
it's a swashbuckling serial,
Yeah.
with cliffhangers, there's Zorro and Flash Gordon. He mixed all these things together because that's what he loved, uh, and out came Star Wars. And then there's individual elements. As we know, there were people who had doubts about what was going to turn out because this was like just wild and weird.
Mhm.
Um, I believe he had such trouble with like because the British production teams, they were like, "What are we doing? We're making
Yeah.
this ridiculous
Yeah.
thing." But it turned out, and people lined up around the block all night to see it. And in a way, when I'm going back to the beginning when I said about we forget about Vader, it's like that scene where he walks into the ship. It's like nobody had seen that before. Like he looked like nothing else and sounded like nothing else.
Mhm.
Um, and that's the secret of Star Wars. And Star Wars can be it's this kind of unique thing where like what a Star Wars story is and what a Star Wars story feels like. Yet within that, you can tell any kind of story. You can tell a horror story. You can tell a kid's story, like for young children. You
Mhm.
can tell a political thriller like Andor. Um, you can play with tone and genre and things, but all the time it's Star Wars, and it feels like Star Wars when it's done properly, and you know what it is.
Mhm.
And it's just something that you can't define, which is why after 50 years, we all still love it, and it
Yeah.
survived so many, and that's nothing that you can create, like deliberately create.
Yeah.
It's just it happens. And as I said, George Lucas was channeling something. Um, and here we are. Yeah, and here we are 50 years later, and I'm writing a book about Darth Vader. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And quickly, like, what's your, do you have like a favorite movie or like moment from the series? Anything that like really, when you think of Star Wars, like your mind
Mm.
immediately jumps to that scene, that character?
That's the thing. There's so many, and like you asked me tomorrow, and like it'll be a different answer.
Yeah,
But um, I still think The Phantom Menace is the movie that I've seen the most on its original release,
yeah,
like going to the movies. And it got to the point where probably after the eighth or ninth time I'd seen it, I was hanging out for the final confrontation with Darth Maul,
yes. Uh-huh.
because that was just incredible. And also because I'd seen it so many times, the anticipation of that scene coming, because I knew it was coming,
Yeah,
it kind of made it better each time.
yeah,
Um,
for
so
sure.
that's probably my favorite
Yeah,
scene in all of Star Wars. But again, ask me tomorrow.
yeah,
I might say something else.
yeah. Now I still remember Phantom Menace. Just like I was nine years old. No, 11. But like seeing the
Hmm.
trailer for the first time and like Darth Maul
Right.
like lighting up the double side lightsaber and
Yeah.
like
Oh,
that
yeah.
that was
That's
the
like
part I
that
wanted to
is
look forward to the most there. So
the double ended lightsaber
yeah,
in the trailer. Absolutely. That's the moment where you're like, yeah, this is it.
yeah,
This is yeah. That's there. But it's funny, like trying to describe the impact of something like that. Um, it's like seeing, and again, you jump forward, Force Awakens, that first teaser, I think it's the teaser, where it kind of, you have, I think I'm trying to remember, you have like the logo and the title, and then the Millennium Falcon as it goes across Jakku,
yes,
like through the sand dunes and then around through the Star Destroyer.
yeah,
It's the same kind of thing. It's like, yeah, okay, this is it.
yeah.
This is not just a movie. This is Star Wars happening.
Yeah, and now we're approaching 10 years of Force Awakens. Now that
I
you,
know
yeah, it's
that's
crazy.
crazy. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Adam. So Star Wars Master of Evil, bookshelves now. Pick it up if you're a fan of Vader. Thank you very much for speaking with me, Adam.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on.